So this is my Lich King raid deck, and this is the Alliance. I'm not down with the Horde, I can. Alright, so I got a 7-drop Sindragosa with Icy Grip. If an opposing hero or ally attacks, it must attack Sindragosa if able. 10 attack, 20 life. Can't go wrong with that. So it's a nice little 7-drop. Plus I like how cool it looks. And then it goes with the Lich King since he summoned it, right? This is for the Wild TCG game, by the way. That's what these cards are for the TCG. Wow. World of Warcraft. Alright, this is Rot Face, 4-drop. With the effect of Protector, which means if my opponent declares an attack on something, like let's say my hero, which is the Lich King, I can redirect the attack to Rot Face instead, and my opponent's monster attacks him instead. So that's how I can protect my Lich King, how I protect my hero, right? He has Slime Spray. At the start of each opponent's turn, Rot Face deals 1 nature damage to each hero and ally that player controls. So this is good, you know, it's a 4-drop. You pay for it, drop it, you get just end your turn, and all your opponent's monsters, his allies, will take 1 damage. And if they have weak life, they all would die, right? So that's a good way of clearing the field. And his hero takes 1 damage. And this, you have multiples of these on the field. That affects stacks, of course, so you can, that way you deal more damage. And you can slowly kill your opponent's hero and win the game that way, if you can keep Rot Face alive long enough, right? This is Drudge Ghoul. It's a 1-drop, really awesome one. Has 4 power, 2 life. Servant of Undeath. You may play this ally from your graveyard. That's great. I mean, you pay 1 to bring it back from the graveyard. That's essentially what it does. You pay 1 to drop it, battle with it, it dies. The following turn you pay 1 to bring it back or whatnot, or in the same turn you pay 1 to bring it back. So there's 4 of them, so that's awesome. Valkyr Shadow Guard. She's a 3-drop. Grab and Drop is her effect. When this ally enters play, you may destroy target ally. So you summon this monster, you kill one of your opponent's monsters. Can't go wrong with that. It comes in handy when you want to get rid of a monster that has Protector in its effect, especially if it has a high defense as well. But you definitely want to get rid of a monster that's Protector, so that way they can't use it to guard and protect their other monsters, their other allies, or their hero. Because the goal is to kill their hero, your opponent's hero, so that we can win. Lady Death Whisper. It's a 4-drop, Frostbolt Volley. When Lady Death Whisper enters play, she deals 2 frost damage to each opposing hero and ally. So this is a good way of just, you summon her, deal 2 damage to your opponent's ally, as well as deal 2 damage to all their monsters, you know. So you can essentially wipe out their field just by summoning this monster. Or if you summon multiples of these monsters, you can do a lot. So for the cost of 8, you could drop 2 of these and deal 4 damage to all your opponent's allies and 4 damage to his hero. Valedria Dreamwalker. It's a 2-drop. This is a neutral card, so you can pretty much splash it into any deck. This has this creature comes into play with 3 damage, so it'll be a 0 attack, 7 life when it comes into play. It has Emerald Vigor, which is at the start of your turn, draw a card if this card is damaged. And since it already comes with damage, you automatically will get the effect in the following turns. This creature cannot attack or be attacked, so your opponent can't attack it to kill it that way, to remove it that way by attacking it, and it can't attack. It has 0 attack, so you won't be attacking with it anyway. The idea is to play it so that we can essentially get draw 2 cards every single turn, so that we can, you know, have hand advantage. Keep your hand advantage, you know what I mean? So you can draw into all your good stuff and beat your opponent that way. And of course, this affects stacks. The more of these you have, the more cards you draw per turn. If I'm right, if I'm right, I'm guessing there's a maximum hand size limit, so be careful. You might have to discard some cards. If not, woo, your hand's gonna be viciously big. This is Defile. It's a 2-drop. We just left the monsters in your deck to now we're going to your abilities, which are essentially spell cards. You play this card and then it'll go to graveyard after you use the effect. You pay 2 to play it. Each opponent discards a card from their hand, turns a resource he controls face down, which is like his quest cards that he used to pay for his card effects, to play his cards, put it face down, destroy an ability card they have on their side of the field, and the equipment they control. You know what I mean? Your opponent makes all those decisions, but that's 4 things he has to do at the at the cost of 2. You pay 2, and he has to do 4 things. So he loses an equipment card, he loses an ability card, he loses a face-up resource. Now it's face down, so it doesn't get to use its quest effect and get a reward out of it, and he loses a card from his hand. So he lost a lot just for the cost of 2. So that's awesome. Raging Spirit. It's a 2-drop ability. This Defile and Raging Spirit can only be played on your turn. Target opponent reveals his hand, and you put an ally from it into play under your control with this ability attached to it. So you look at your opponent's hand, which is great to see what your opponent has. That way you know what he can and can't do. And then you take one of his monsters from his hands, an ally. You could take something like this, like your monster that costs a lot to cast with a really awesome effect like Sing Dragosa, and then drop it onto your side of the field, attach this card to it, and now you have control of it. Now you can play with it and do whatever you want with it. Before your opponent was ever able to summon it, right? So in your second turn, you're ready. You can have a really big monster on your side of the field, ready to attack your opponent's hero down to death, right? It has the effect of ongoing, which means they'll stay on the field. And this is a continuous effect. Attached ally has Assault 2 and is also a Scourge ally. So on top of its creature type that already is, it's also a Scourge on top of that. And has Assault 2. I currently don't remember what Assault 2 does. Either it gives you extra power or extra attack. I can't remember. This is a instant ability, which means you can play it during your opponent's turn, during either phases, as well as your turn, of course. So a card that you can play during your opponent's turn is good because that gives you the little surprise factor. It's a counter card. Its effect is interrupt target card. That's what it does. It counters. It negates a card that your opponents try to play, and if you do, as in this card wasn't negated itself, no, your opponent didn't counter your counter, the Lich King, which is what your hero in your deck is, the Lich King heals damage from himself equal to that card's cost. So if your opponent plays a card that was going to deal your Lich King 5 damage, for example, and you were going to lose if you did that, obviously you could play this to interrupt that, so that way your Lich King doesn't take 5 damage. And then let's say the cost of the card is 5, then you gain your Lich King gains 5 health. So that's awesome. That way, if your opponent happens to draw another copy of that card that deals 5 damage, even if he uses it, you'll still be alive. Your Lich King will still be on the field. So this is good to help you stall longer. And healing your hero is very important, because the more you heal him, the longer he lasts. The longer he lasts, the better, right? That way he can fight and win you the duel. Now we're going into the events and quest cards. This is basically your resource, or you could consider like your mana pool, stuff like that. These are the cards that you will use to pay for the cost of the other cards. These cards also have their own effect that you can use. These resource cards, you can use these cards to pay for their own effect. You could use them as part of the cost to pay for their own effect. So that's awesome. And I like to use the ones that have the one cost, so that way they could pay for themselves relatively easy. For example, this is Servant of Undeath on my turn, which means I can only use this on my turn, not my opponent's. Pay 1 to initiate this event. The event effect is put up to 2 target cards from your graveyard into your hand. So after using my ability cards, for example, you know, doing stuff to my opponent like Defile. Let's say I play 2 Defiles, you know, devastating my opponent. Then I can use this, you know, cast this, not cast, but play this onto the field, tap it to pay for its itself, for its effect, put it face down, which is called exhausting, and get the effect of adding both the Defiles from the graveyard back to my hand. And if I have the resources, you know, to cast these 2, pay 4, cast these 2, do the effects all over again, and devastate my opponent even further. So this is a good way of recycling my abilities. But I could also get back my monsters if I want, of course. But I mainly like to use them for my abilities. Scouring the Desert. Another quest card. Pay 4 to complete this quest. Reward is draw a card, and you may shuffle your graveyard into your deck. This is good against decks that might try to mill you out, try to deck you out. You can use this to counter that, so you don't deck out. Or if you, since the deck draws a lot, if you draw and play almost half your deck, and you're almost decking yourself out by playing so many cards, you can use this card obviously to recycle everything, put your graveyard back in your deck shuffle, so you can replenish your deck and continue, you know, in the game. Plus, obviously, who doesn't like to be able to reuse all their powerful effects, right? And this could also, you know, you could tap it to pay for the cost of its effect. A Question of Gluttony. This card is pretty good. It's definitely good first turn, you know, if you go first, or for your first move, your first turn move. First turn move, you play this. It gets 1. It costs to do its effect. It costs 1 less for every card in your hand. So since you start the game off with 7 cards, when you play it, you have 6 in your hand. So that means the cost of this card's effect to complete the quest to draw a card is 1. So you tap it and exhaust it for its own cost, right? Draw a card, and it replaces itself. So now you got 7 cards in your hand and 1 resource exhausted on your side field, ready to be used the following turn. So this is a good first turn move. It's definitely the resource you want to play first, among other ones, but definitely you want to play first turn because it only costs 1 to get the +1 out of it in your first move. Bane of the Eldari, or the Eldaro, whatever. It's a quest. If you have an equipment, you know, an equipment card on your side of the field, you know, that's an equipment, right? If you have one of those on the field, you pay 1 to complete this quest, draw a card. So as long as you have an equipment card, and you should see these equipment cards only cost 1 to cast, it wouldn't be that hard to cast them. You cast them onto the field, you equip them to your hero, of course. Play this, exhaust it for its own cost, and draw a card. So it essentially does what that does, and what this one does. This, you don't have to meet a requirement. It's just as simple as you play it, you tap it to pay for its own cost, draw a card. Gotta love that. The other ones you gotta meet a requirement like this one. You gotta have an equipment in order to do that. This you have to have essentially 6 cards in your hands to do that. This you gotta pay 4 just to draw the extra card and get an added effect. This you just cast it, tap it, you know, to exhaust it, draw a card. And the One True King, gotta love the name of that. And of course it has Lich King in the artwork, gotta love that. Helm of Domination. It's an equipment armor plate card. Its effect, Leader of the Scourge. Once per turn, you can pay 1. Target ally has ferocity this turn, which means the monster can attack the turn you summon it. That's always good. And I have Death Rattle, which is when this card enters the graveyard from anywhere, whether it be from the hand, deck, out of play to the graveyard, whatever, field to the graveyard, I can put this card back into my hand, which is awesome. So it's reusable. So I only played 2, because 1, you can only have 1 on the field, because your hero can only wear 1 helmet, can't wear more than 1, right? It's not realistic to wear 2 helmets at the same time, right? And second, since it constantly adds itself back to the hand, you can infinitely recast it. It's no point in running any more than you really need to. 1 is enough, but I run 2. I have a better chance of drawing it. But with my hero, I won't even need to draw it because my hero can just cast it from the deck. So I have just 2. Don't need the maximum 4 like I like to play. So 2 is enough. Same goes for Frostmourne. Has the same Death Rattle effect. So it can recycle itself. So no need to have more than 1. It costs 1 to cast. It's a 1-drop weapon, sword, melee 1. It's a 2-handed weapon, so you can only have one at a time, because your hero only has 2 hands, so you can only hold 1 sword with 2 hands. You can't hold 2 swords. You can't dual wield unless you have an effect that does, which this deck does not. Anyway, Harvest Soul. When the Lich King deals fatal damage to an opposing ally with Frostmourne, which is this card, add a +1 attack counter to it, and the Lich King deals 2 frost damage to each opposing hero. So you kill your opponent's weak ally monsters, and your opponent's hero will take 2 frost damage every time you do that. And of course, I already mentioned the Death Rattle effect. Add it back to the hand no matter how it goes to the graveyard. And that is the end of the deck profile. Oh no, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention the Lich King's power. The strategy is to stall long enough so you can be on your 10th turn, so you can get Lich King's ability. Now, Lich King has Undead's Armaments, which is at the start of your turn. If you control 2 or more resources, you may search your deck for a card named Frostmourne or Helm of Domination and put it into play. So that's how you get your equipments onto the field without even having to cast them. And on your 10th turn, flip the Lich King. This is the front of it. You flip it over, so that way you be on its back, and this is what it looks like on the back. It has the effect Fury of Frostmourne, which is at the start of your turn, the Lich King deals 300,000 it's funny, I can hardly see it. Preventable, that's the word, fuck. Unpreventable. 300,000 unpreventable shadow damage to each opposing hero. So if you're playing with, you and a bunch of other players, this can wipe them all out. You could beat all your opponents all at one time with this effect. This is 300,000. This will guarantee. This is way overkill, but I love the sound of that. 300,000, and it's unpreventable, so you can't stop that. So that's awesome. So essentially, on your 11th turn, you win, because on your 10th turn he flips over. Your 11th turn, that'll be the start of your turn, and you'll win on your 11th turn. So that's awesome. So the idea is to stall for your 11th turn, so you can win. And that's the win condition. But you see, there's tons of other tricks in this deck, of course. And that's the end of the deck profile.